Welcome to this talk from the National Library of Scotland on researching your working class ancestors using the UK Parliamentary Papers database.
Once you've established the framework of your family's history using the various vital records, births, deaths, marriages, census and OPR, you want to be able to add biographical detail about the various people you've found. This can be very easy if you're researching the great and the good, but not so easy if your ancestors are working class. In this presentation, I want to show you a rich resource, one that might come as a surprise to many people, the Parliamentary Records of the UK. Very dry and uninteresting, you might think, but not a bit of it. Remarkable numbers of individuals have bumped up against officialdom for a multitude of reasons over the course of the last couple of 100 years and left their mark in parliamentary records. Since their establishment, railways have been incredibly dangerous places to work until more modern times, and railway lines incredibly dangerous places to trespass, which is still the case today. And yet people have often been incredibly blasé about them, leading from what seemed from our modern perspective to be astonishing numbers of accidents. Railway companies have been obliged to return annual reports of accident statistics since the inception of the railway network, and these can be of great use for family historians. Some are merely lists, as this example from 1872, which gives only the date and circumstances of the accident, a bare account that isn't very much more detailed than what you might expect to find on the Register of Corrected Entries. Others are very different, as in this example from 1909. While it's obviously an attempt by the railway company to absolve itself from any liability for the accident, if you look at the last paragraph here, which states that it was no part of Malcolm's duty to couple trucks. Somehow, despite that, the report of his death brings him very vividly to life. An ordinary working chap, not a job's worth, who saw a job that needed done, probably had seen it done dozens of times before by his colleagues, had maybe even done it himself on many occasions to help out, and decided to just buckle down and do it. 99 times out of 100, this attitude would have been a great asset to the company. Unfortunately, on this 100th occasion, the poor man lost his life. Yet others have value for family history from a different perspective. They predate statutory registration. This example is from the Return of Accidents published in 1841 and covers the period 1839 to 40. It names names as well as outlining circumstances, names that may not appear in the OPR, and even if they do, often with only the barest detail. It's not only accidents reports that can be useful though. Reports of the various royal commissions also contain a wealth of detail. From late Georgian times until the present, commissions of inquiry have been a favourite method of investigating all sorts of issues: employment in various sectors, the police, lunatic asylums and madhouses, prisons, just about anything you can think of. The way the commissions were organised was that sub-commissioners were sent out to gather evidence in support of proposed legislation or to enable examination by Parliament of the effects of existing legislation. The evidence was presented to Parliament, but it wasn't discarded after it had been used. It was preserved to provide context and rationale for Parliament's decisions. And those minutes of evidence contain a huge amount of biographical information. This first example is from 1841, from an investigation of the employment of women and children in the mines and manufactories of Britain. It's one of the Shaftesbury Acts. And the evidence here is from 2 children involved in coal mining in Midlothian. The top example, evidence given by Elizabeth Selkirk, is reproduced very nearly in the child's own words. She gangs like the cuddies, for example, when she's at work. It also contains a note from the Commissioner about her appearance and her living conditions. She's described as very sickly and emaciated, and she lives in a wretched hovel at Path Head. So 7 people crammed into a room. No, 7 children plus parents, actually, 9 people crammed into a room not more than 10 feet by 14. The wretched hovel she lives in still exists today in Path Head, or one very similar to it does. There's a row of miners' cottages still in existence there, although nowadays they're no longer hovels but comfortable wee houses. Some of the entries, like John Selkirk's here, also contain hearsay evidence. As you'll notice, it says Foster, Miller, Blythe and Aitken are all clean gone in the breath. They're suffering from respiratory disease. The Aitken mentioned in this entry is one of my husband's forebears, who died of asthma, so-called, then we would probably call it COPD or similar now, in his mid-40s, and as a victim of occupational disease that was rife in the mining workforce. This commission is also famous for its illustrations of children at work in the mines, as here, where we have a sketch of Janet Cumming presented next to her evidence here. But the commission doesn't only report on mining, although that's a large part of its content, and it doesn't only contain evidence from children. It covers a lot of industries that we wouldn't let children within a mile of these days, hazardous occupations like grass founding and bleaching, and the evidence comes from various ages and grades of employees as well as mine owners. Here's another example, this time from a commission investigating employment in spinning and weaving. As you can see, it's the table of deaths associated with the Catherine Mill in Sorn, Ayrshire, and covers the period 1813 to 1833. It gives names, age at death, and cause of death year by year. Very useful if, as in some of the cases here, and I've checked, you can't find a relevant entry in the OPR. Similarly, from the same commission report, a list of marriages and births from the Grand Home Mill in Aberdeenshire. Natural children in these cases, meaning illegitimate children. It doesn't necessarily name the fathers, but can still be a huge help in the interpretation of information that you might find in the vital records. One final example is from the commission investigating the employment of women and children in agriculture, which was published in 1870. A farmer, Andrew Fleming in Lanarkshire, gives loads of details about his employees, including their wages in cash and in kind, and that the farm workers with families live in tiled cottages. His female help, however, lives in the farmhouse, sleeping in the kitchen, and a young laddie who works on the farm sleeps in a closet in a dwelling house. This evidence was gathered in 1867 to 1868, and on the face of it, you might not think it has much relevance to the census in 1871. After all, the agricultural workforce was comparatively mobile and people do move on. However, the details here do give us an idea of the standard of living of the employees in the late 1860s, which presumably wouldn't have changed that much in such a short space of time. When we look at the census records for the farm, we can clearly see on the first page the shepherd and his family at Calabank Cottage, quite a large family to fend for in his wages, then the farmhouse with all its occupants, and finally another tied cottage with a general ag lab or agricultural labourer occupying it. On the succeeding page, we find the two ploughmen, who have lesser wages but smaller families as well, and again this information gives us some idea of their standard of living. Their diet must certainly have been monotonous. It's noticeable that neither ploughman has ready access to milk, as the shepherd does, but probably relies heavily on potatoes and oatmeal to keep body and soul together, supplemented with whatever can be grown in the garden. The house, though, while not palatial, is comparatively spacious. It even has 2 windows. But the biggest payoff, when you compare Mr. Fleming's evidence with the census record, comes in the entry for the farmhouse itself. Here's the farmhouse with the farmer and his family. So there's the farmer, his wife, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 assorted children. Underneath the children come the female farm servants and a general servant. And then at the very bottom of that, Charles Wilson, who's a farm labourer. Looking at this, the accommodation arrangements outlined in Farmer Fleming's evidence haven't changed. All these people are noted as being in the house during the night of the census. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Charles Wilson, aged 14, who sleeps in a closet in a Lanarkshire farmhouse. Now, where in the world are you going to find out information like that about someone who likely died more than 80 years ago? The evidence presented to committee is a rich source, but there are other sources in the parliamentary record as well. For example, this, which comes from a series of papers relating to the then colonies. This concerns Sophia Bromley, a London orphan who is in the care of the Child's Friend Society, an organisation that aimed to save orphan children from a life of crime by educating them and ultimately finding them indentured employment in a variety of jobs in either the Cape of Good Hope or the Swan River colony in Australia. Once they had served their bound time, the theory was that they would then have a trade or craft with which they could make an independent living. As you can see, despite apparently good intentions, the reality was sometimes a little different. Poor Sophia hasn't had many breaks in life. She was abandoned at birth, she's noted as being a foundling, and raised in an early Victorian orphanage, and we've all heard enough about Dickens to understand that that possibly wasn't the most empathetic of upbringings, shall we say. And then she's uprooted and sent to an entirely different continent as an indentured servant. Her first placement obviously doesn't work out because she's moved from Swellendam to Mr. White to enter the service of the Reverend Mr. Robinson, also of Swellendam, where she's employed as a housemaid. We have a physical description of her here, and as we would probably understand her case, the trauma of her early life has resulted in her becoming a bedwetter, for which she is physically punished, despite her master's opinion that she suffers from a bodily infirmity. Now, I'm quite prepared to admit that this is probably not the most edifying detail that you could find out about one of your ancestors, but it speaks to the sometimes surprisingly intimate evidence, the nature of the evidence that you can find in the parliamentary record. Some really quite surprisingly intimate details. Now, I haven't cherry-picked these examples. The more difficult job was deciding what to leave out rather than what to include, and these are by no means the only kinds of documents to contain what to the family history enthusiast is pure gold. If you enjoy the process of researching, the parliamentary record is endlessly interesting. You may or may not be lucky enough to find a contribution from an ancestor or a mention of them by someone else, but at the very least you'll have a very vivid picture of their daily life and circumstances. So I hope I've inspired you to take a look and see what you can find out. Now, the old school method of searching for these documents was both tortuous and torturous, relying on cross-referencing from paper indexes. The good news is that this is something that technology has made easier. These records have been digitised by a company called ProQuest and made available via institutions worldwide. The even better news is that if you're a member of the National Library and resident in Scotland, you can access these from home via our e-resources platform. Joining the library is free and it's a very easy process. From our homepage, www.nls.uk, click the orange button in the right-hand corner of the screen that says Log In. This will take you to an online form which you fill in. If you scroll right down to the bottom of that and submit, that's the first part of the process. Our automated system will then send you an email verification containing a link which you can follow to set up a password for your account. Now, if it doesn't arrive within a very short space of time after pressing submit, I mean, it literally should arrive in a couple of minutes or so, please take a look in your junk mail folder. Because the email is machine generated, it very often falls foul of spam filters and ends up not coming into your inbox at all, but it is a completely safe email. Once you've clicked on the link and set up your password, you are then free to access the Resident Scots Members Only section of our website. So to find it, back to our website again, and you'll see a link in the line of links across the very top of the website. It says Digital Resources. When you click on this, you're offered a choice of two routes, Digital Gallery or e-resources. Now, the Digital Gallery contains lots and lots and lots of material which we have digitized and put up on our website and is available to view for free anywhere in the world. And there is an awful lot of interesting information in there as well, which can be of use to the family historian. It well repays having a little poke around to see exactly what there is. The other link that you're presented with is eResources, and this is the subscription-only material which we pay for and make available remotely to resident Scots. When you click on that, you'll be prompted to log in using your email address and password. Then you will hit the home page of the eResources platform. And you can search by all of these categories which are down the left-hand side of your screen there, but to get to UK parliamentary papers, which is the topic of this presentation, the easiest way is to browse by title and then to click on U, and the link for the site should come up. It's important to get into the site this way using this link which says auth.nls rather than any other method of getting into the site, because this link will actually take you past the paywall. So that's the way in. Even though if you look in our catalogue, it appears that you can access things directly from there, you will hit the paywall using that. They just flag up that these things exist. This is the route in for people who have access to our subscribed version of the database. Once you get in, the search page comes up. There is an advanced search there, but for these purposes I'll just demonstrate the straightforward basic search. Once you're in, you can search by whatever topic you like. Now, what you can't do is search across all documents for mentions of a specific name. The search engine isn't that precise, but you can search by topic, and it can be absolutely any topic you can think of. Now, I've just searched for agriculture here because I'm going to show you the route to the 1870 Employment Commission, Andrew Fleming, the farmer. It's important to remember, though, if you're looking for a particular phrase, put the phrase in quotation marks to limit the number of events the number of results that you turn back. You could search, for example, by poor relief Scotland, railway accidents, children's employment, any kind of term like that, but the critical thing is to put it in the quotation marks to force the search engine to do what you want it to. Now, you're presented with a huge range of results from this, but there are filters down the left-hand side of the screen by which you can narrow your spread of results. And for example, for this one, I know that the document that I'm looking for is in 1870. So I've put that in as the start and end date, but you can have any start and end dates that you want, obviously. And then you can search by paper series if you know exactly where the paper series is. If you have a reference from somewhere which has got a parliamentary reference on it, for example, CD for command paper and a number, you can search by that as well in the basic search. And you can search by paper type. Lots and lots of different filters that you can go on. Once you get to the next page of results, they present like this. This first one is the document that we're interested in, and the title of the document itself is the link. So if you click on that, it then presents in your screen. It will come up with the first page of the document, and then there's a very handy search within text box, and it really is a good text search box, this one. Again, if you're looking for something particular, a particular phrase, put it in inverted commas. But there's no need to search if you don't want to. You can just read the report. You can download a copy of the report to read offline. And all of these are freely available. Now, when I put in Andrew Fleming, we get 2 results from him. And the first one is actually the one that I used. It brings up the exact reference that I showed you in the bulk of the presentation. Very, very simple site to use. The text search, as I say, on the individual documents is excellent. It really is fabulous. So that's where you find them. Finally, if you need any help on this or any other topic that you feel the library might be able to help you with, either limited amounts of research on your behalf or questions about what sources are available and where they're available, anything at all. We run a remote inquiry service. It's always available. You can use the Ask a Librarian link in our contact info page on the website, which will send us an email, and somebody will aim to return your answer to your inquiry, usually within about 10 working days, very often an awful lot quicker than that. Or alternatively, if you have a quick inquiry, something that can just be answered off the top of somebody's head, come and chat with us. We are under chat service daily during our opening hours, so you can always reach us that way as well. If we can't answer via chat, what we'll do is we'll turn it into an email inquiry and somebody will email you back with an answer to your question. So we're always here, we're always willing to help.